Viborg Castle's hidden spiral staircase. Starting our list is Viborg Castle's concealed spiral staircase, discovered during 2018 excavations at this 13th-century Swedish fortress located on the border of medieval Sweden. The staircase features uneven stone steps carved in a tight spiral, leading down to a forgotten crypt containing medieval artifacts, a purse of early 19th-century gold coins, and a clay brick etched with 9 men's Morris, a primitive form of checkers that medieval soldiers played during long garrison duties to pass time between battles and guard rotations. This fortress protected Sweden's eastern border for 6 centuries, from the medieval period through World War II, making it a significant military stronghold that witnessed countless conflicts. The castle's strategic location at the easternmost point of the Swedish kingdom meant constant vigilance against eastern invaders, primarily Russian forces seeking to expand westward into Scandinavian territories. The fortress changed hands multiple times throughout its turbulent history, serving as a defensive barrier regardless of which power controlled it during different historical periods. The discovery adds archaeological value to Viborg's already rich history, though it lacks the dramatic narrative of other entries on this list. The artifacts found are historically interesting, but relatively common for the period. Gold coins were standard currency for wealthy travelers and soldiers receiving payment, while board games carved into building materials show how medieval people entertained themselves during construction projects or garrison duty when not actively fighting. The staircase itself appears functional rather than deliberately hidden, likely just forgotten over centuries of renovations, conflicts, and changing architectural priorities as successive occupiers modified the fortress to suit their defensive needs and preferences. Online commentary is sparse, with TripAdvisor reviewers focusing more on the castle's medieval atmosphere and waterfront location than specific archaeological discoveries from recent excavations. Visitors appreciate the fortress as a typical medieval structure surrounded by water on all sides, with a small museum inside displaying various historical artifacts. But few mention the 2018 excavation findings that uncovered the hidden staircase. The lack of widespread public knowledge about the hidden staircase suggests it hasn't captured popular imagination the way legendary secret passages in more famous castles have managed to do over the years. Viborg Castle ranks low on our list because while the hidden staircase represents solid archaeology and proper historical documentation using modern techniques, it doesn't carry the sinister purpose or legendary drama that makes secret rooms truly captivating. To audiences seeking darker historical narratives, it's an accidental time capsule rather than an intentional secret. Workers didn't hide this passage for nefarious purposes or to conceal crimes. It simply became lost as the building evolved through different architectural styles and military requirements. The archaeological methodology was sound, and the artifacts provide valuable dating evidence for researchers, but there's no ghost story attached to it, no murder mystery to solve, no daring wartime escape using these particular stairs. It's history without horror, discovery without drama, archaeology without the atmospheric terror that characterizes the higher entries on this ranking. If you think a forgotten staircase with medieval board games is fascinating, then you haven't seen what eccentric Victorian nobility built beneath their estates for reasons nobody fully understands. Welbeck Abbey's eccentric tunnel network. Next, we have the vast underground tunnel complex beneath Welbeck Abbey in North Nottinghamshire, England, representing one of the strangest construction projects in British history. William John Cavendish Scott Bentinck, the 5th Duke of Portland, spent over 18 years and approximately £2 million in today's currency building 4 main tunnels, with the longest stretching an incredible 1.5 miles through the earth beneath his property. He employed up to 1,500 workers at the project's peak, many of whom had previously built the London Underground and brought their expertise in subterranean construction to create this bizarre network radiating from the abbey like spokes from a wheel, all for reasons that remain historically unclear. The Duke's tunnels included an underground ballroom large enough to hold thousands of guests that never hosted a single dance or celebration, a library filled with thousands of books that were rarely, if ever, read in its subterranean darkness, and a chapel where religious services were never held, despite being fully furnished and decorated. All these spaces were connected by passages wide enough to drive horse-drawn carriages through, yet built for a man who rarely allowed anyone to see him and avoided all social contact. This 19th century engineering feat represents Victorian eccentricity at its absolute peak, when industrial wealth enabled the aristocracy to indulge their strangest impulses without financial restraint or social accountability from their peers. The project inspired Kenneth Grahame's character, Mr. Badger, in the beloved children's novel The Wind in the Willows, whose philosophy centered on finding peace and tranquility underground, away from the scrutiny and chaos of surface life and society's demands. Grahame likely heard stories about the Duke's peculiar construction projects circulating through British society and translated that withdrawal from public life into a wise, solitary character living contentedly beneath the earth in elaborate underground chambers. The literary connection adds unexpected cultural significance to what might otherwise be dismissed as merely eccentric construction by a wealthy recluse. The positive aspect is the sheer ambition and scale. This wasn't a small hidden room or single secret passage, but an entire underground estate, complete with all the facilities of surface living transplanted beneath the earth. The mystery of motivation adds historical intrigue that has kept historians and psychologists debating for over a century about what drove this massive undertaking. The engineering accomplishment itself deserves recognition, as Victorian-era workers hand-dug miles of tunnels without modern machinery or safety equipment, creating stable structures with proper ventilation and drainage that remain structurally sound today. However, historians remain sharply divided on why the Duke built this elaborate network, and the lack of definitive answers frustrates those seeking clear historical narrative with documented motivations. Some suggest he suffered from psoriasis, a chronic skin condition causing red, scaly patches that would have been highly visible and socially stigmatizing in Victorian society. Where physical appearance determined social standing and marriageability, the condition would have made public appearances painful, both physically and emotionally, potentially explaining his desire for isolation and private underground spaces where he could move freely without being seen or judged by Victorian society's harsh standards. Others believe he was simply obsessed with technology and construction for its own sake, finding deep satisfaction in the building process itself rather than caring about the end result or practical use of the spaces. The tunnels served no clear defensive or practical purpose. This was peaceful England in the 1800s, not medieval Europe, where underground passages meant survival during sieges and military attacks. The Duke had no enemies laying siege to his estate, no military threats requiring secret escape routes, no practical reason anyone can definitively identify. The Duke's lifestyle was extraordinarily reclusive by any standard, even for wealthy Victorian aristocrats who often lived privately. Only one trusted servant was permitted to see him directly, and all communication with other staff occurred through written notes carefully passed under doors to avoid face-to-face contact. He built 15 miles of interconnected tunnels and underground rooms, according to some historical accounts, though the exact mileage varies significantly in different historical records and estate documents. The discrepancy itself speaks volumes about the mysterious nature of the project. Even basic facts about the tunnel network's full extent remain disputed among historians today. Reddit users describe it as a quirky historical oddity, fascinated by the underground ballroom that never hosted celebrations despite being beautiful, and the massive construction effort that seemingly served no purpose anyone can identify. The ballroom in particular captures modern imagination, a fully finished space with decorated walls and ceiling, complete with gas lighting and ventilation systems, yet never used for its intended function even once. What psychological factors drive a person to build something beautiful and functional, but never enjoy it or share it with others? TripAdvisor reviews frequently note disappointment that the tunnels aren't open to regular visitors during estate tours, though the estate does show tunnel entrances during guided walks, so visitors can peer into the darkness. Visitors can look into the underground world, but cannot explore the full network, leaving much to imagination and speculation. The mystery remains frustratingly incomplete. We know what was built with considerable precision and who built it, but not definitively why, which places this firmly in a historical gray area between documented fact and endless psychological speculation. The Duke's eccentricity makes this endlessly fascinating to historians and psychologists, but the lack of a definitive sinister or practical purpose drops it lower on our ranking. Its impressive engineering married to completely inexplicable psychology, a massive construction project born from either severe medical necessity or deep mental compulsion, but without the dark legends, violent history, or practical military necessity that elevate other entries on this list. If you think underground ballrooms that never hosted dances are strange, then you haven't heard about the monastery library that remained completely secret until a book thief discovered it by accident. Mont Saint-Odile's Forgotten Medieval Library. Moving up our list is the hidden medieval library at Mont Saint-Odile Monastery, dramatically perched 2,500 feet up in the Vosges Mountains of France's Alsace region, with commanding views. This 7th century monastery, dedicated to Saint Odile, who miraculously recovered her sight after baptism, according to Catholic tradition and local legend, contained a long-forgotten library, accessible only through concealed stairways built into the monastery's thick stone walls during its construction. The secret passages remained completely unknown to monastery staff for centuries, their existence utterly forgotten as generations of monks came and went, living their entire lives unaware that behind wooden panels and stone walls lay narrow corridors leading to chambers filled with rare medieval manuscripts of immense historical value. The monastery continued its religious functions throughout the centuries without interruption, housing monks who walked past these hidden passages daily without knowing they existed, or that priceless books lay just behind the walls. The architectural knowledge of the passage's location died with whoever originally built them, leaving no written records, no architectural maps, no institutional memory whatsoever of their location or original purpose. This situation changed dramatically and unexpectedly in 2003, when French book collector Stanislas Grosset discovered the passages while exploring the monastery, and proceeded to systematically steal over 1,000 ancient rare books over an extended period of months. The passages were originally constructed centuries earlier to allow senior monastery members to secretly eavesdrop on common room conversations among lower-ranking monks, a practice revealing the Catholic Church's surveillance culture, where authority figures continuously monitored subordinates, private discussions, maintaining institutional control through systematic information gathering. This architectural espionage demonstrates the paranoia and rigid power dynamics within medieval religious institutions, where even supposedly private conversations among brothers in faith were subject to monitoring by suspicious superiors. Grosset's systematic theft, motivated purely by passionate bibliophilia rather than financial profit or criminal gain, makes this story uniquely compelling among book crimes throughout history. He wasn't a professional thief operating for financial gain, had absolutely no criminal history before this incident, and didn't sell the stolen books on black markets or to wealthy private collectors. He simply wanted desperately to possess and read these rare medieval texts in private, driven by an obsessive love of historical literature that completely overrode his ethical judgment and respect for monastery property. Over many months, he carefully used the secret passages to enter the library at night, methodically selecting valuable volumes and carrying them out through hidden corridors that monastery residents didn't know existed. The logistics of his theft are remarkable when examined closely. He navigated narrow medieval passages in complete darkness, located specific books in the unlit library using only flashlights, and transported them back through the hidden corridors without detection for an extended period spanning months. Each theft required careful planning and precise execution, as getting caught would mean immediate arrest and permanent loss of access to the texts he loved above all else. His continued success speaks both to his dedication and detailed planning, and to the monastery's complete ignorance of the passage's existence after centuries. After police finally set up hidden cameras triggered by motion sensors in the library, once they realized books were systematically disappearing, they caught Grosset in the act during one of his nighttime visits and arrested arrested him. His sentence demonstrated perfect poetic justice. Hundreds of hours of community service cataloging the very books he'd stolen, spending countless hours documenting, organizing, and describing the medieval texts he'd illegally removed. He had to carefully examine each volume, record its contents and physical condition, and place it properly in the library's collection system, essentially doing the scholarly work he'd wanted to do all along, but now as court-ordered punishment rather than personal pleasure. All volumes were eventually recovered safely from his small apartment, where they'd been carefully stored and lovingly preserved rather than damaged or sold for profit. The positive elements include the genuine architectural ingenuity of hidden listening passages that demonstrate sophisticated medieval construction techniques and the monastery's systematic surveillance methods. The preservation of rare medieval texts through Grosset's accidental rediscovery means these books are now properly cataloged, protected, and available to legitimate scholars. The human element, a non-professional thief driven by pure passion for books rather than greed, adds unusual character to what could have been just another simple theft story. It humanizes both the crime and the criminal in ways that professional book thieves operating for profit never could achieve. If you think secret library theft is dramatic, then you haven't heard about the castle with a bear-fighting pit and a room where a Renaissance poet died slowly from infected pig fat. Warwick Castle's Bear Pit and Haunted Watergate Tower. Continuing upward on our ranking takes us to Warwick Castle, originally built by William the Conqueror in 1068 on a strategic bend of the River Avon in Warwickshire, England. This imposing Norman fortress has witnessed nearly 1,000 years of English history, from brutal medieval warfare through the bloody English Civil War to its current status as a major tourist attraction, drawing visitors worldwide. The castle hides multiple secret rooms discovered at different times, including a bear pit discovered only in 2013 during restoration work, used for the cruel sport of bear baiting, where captive animals were tied to central poles and forced to fight other animals or human opponents, while wealthy spectators wagered enormous sums on outcomes. More significantly for our purposes, the Watergate Tower contains a secret room tied directly to the ghost of Sir Fulk Greville, an Elizabethan poet, dramatist, and statesman who lived in Warwick Castle for years and was brutally murdered there in 1628 under circumstances that remain chilling. Greville, known throughout England for his literary works and considerable political influence at court, was stabbed repeatedly by his servant Ralph Heywood, who was consumed with rage about being completely excluded from his master's will, a perceived slight that transformed into murderous violence over financial disappointment and feelings of disrespect. The vicious attack occurred in the tower room that Greville used as his private quarters. Heywood stabbed his employer multiple times in a frenzied assault, then turned the bloody knife on himself in an apparent murder-suicide attempt, motivated by shame, rage, and despair. However, Greville somehow survived the initial attack, living long enough to face an even more gruesome death at the hands of well-intentioned but completely ignorant medical practitioners, working with the limited knowledge available in 1628. Elizabethan doctors, working with the medical knowledge available in the early 17th century before germ theory existed, treated Greville's stab wounds by stuffing them full of pig fat because they firmly believed the fat would disinfect the injuries and promote healing. This practice, common in the period across England, was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of infection and wound care that predated germ theory by over 2 centuries. Instead of disinfecting the wounds as intended, the pig fat turned rancid inside Greville's body, creating the perfect environment for bacterial growth and tissue necrosis. The wounds became severely infected, and after several agonizing weeks of unbearable pain as the infection spread through his system, Sir Greville finally died, a painful death, murdered not by his servant's knife, but by the medical treatment meant to save him. The castle's medieval dungeons, including oubliettes where prisoners were dropped through trapdoors and forgotten about, add considerably to its dark reputation. These oubliettes, from the French word meaning to forget, were vertical shafts where prisoners fell into darkness, often breaking bones on impact, then left to die slowly from injuries, starvation, or exposure in complete isolation. Reddit users note with horror that these oubliettes were sometimes strategically positioned beneath dining rooms so lords could hear the screams of the prisoners while eating their meals, psychological torture through architecture that combined physical suffering with the humiliation of providing dinner entertainment. entertainment. The Bear Pit represents documented animal cruelty spanning centuries, part of England's brutal tradition of blood sports. Greville's story combines murder, failed suicide, and catastrophic medical malpractice into a gothic tragedy that supposedly left his ghost haunting the Watergate Tower for centuries. However, online discussion focuses more on the castle's accessible dungeons and oubliettes than these specific secret rooms, and TripAdvisor reviews praise the historical atmosphere while noting high admission prices. Warwick Castle ranks here because while it contains multiple hidden spaces with genuinely dark purposes documented in historical records, the Bear Pit discovery came relatively late in the castle's modern tourism history and lacks the dramatic reveal that characterizes other entries. Greville's compelling ghost story is based on documented murder, but isn't as widely discussed online as more famous castle legends that have captured global imagination. If you think bear fighting pits and infected pig fat are shocking, then you haven't heard about the secret bathroom in the Vatican covered with erotic Renaissance art painted by Raphael himself. Vatican City's secret erotic bathroom. Climbing higher brings perhaps the most unexpected entry on our entire list, the Stufetta della Bibbiena, a small heated bathroom hidden deep within the Vatican's private papal apartments where high-ranking cardinals lived. This 16th century washing room belonged to Cardinal Bibbiena, an Italian cardinal and comedy writer whose literary works included humorous plays performed at papal courts for entertainment, and was painted by Renaissance master Raphael in 1516 at the absolute height of his artistic powers and creative genius. The shocking element that elevates this bathroom beyond mere historical curiosity: Raphael filled this papal bathroom with elaborate erotic frescoes depicting classical mythology in explicitly sexual terms that would never be permitted in public Vatican spaces open to visitors. Author Tony Perrottet, researching for his book on Europe's historic underbelly, convinced a Vatican cleric to grant him a rare 5-minute tour of this normally forbidden space, becoming one of the very few modern visitors permitted inside these secret chambers that remain strictly off-limits. Perrottet described images including a naked Venus styling her hair by a lake, her nude form rendered with Raphael's characteristic attention to anatomical detail and idealized beauty that made him one of the Renaissance's greatest masters. Another fresco showed Pan, the half-human, half-goat Greek deity associated with wild nature, sexuality, and rustic music. Raphael designed the frescoed panels like a graphic novel for Cardinal Bibbiena to admire. While lounging in his hot tub, essentially Renaissance pornography created by one of history's greatest artists for private consumption. This room represents the Renaissance's complex relationship with classical eroticism within church walls, where Catholic officials simultaneously enforced strict moral codes on the public, while privately commissioning sexually explicit artwork for personal enjoyment. The contradiction reveals the dual nature of Renaissance Vatican culture, where Greek and Roman artistic traditions celebrating human sexuality coexisted uneasily with Christian teachings about modesty and celibacy. The positive aspect is pure art, historical significance, a hidden Raphael masterpiece unknown to most Vatican visitors and art historians, preserved for 5 centuries in climate-controlled privacy. The bathroom's restricted access means very few scholars have studied these frescoes in detail. However, this ranks here because, while fascinating from cultural perspectives, it lacks the life-or-death stakes of castle secrets built for survival, imprisonment, or murder. This was a private bathroom, decorated according to Renaissance tastes for classical themes. If you think erotic frescoes in a papal bathroom are scandalous, then you haven't heard about the castle built into a cave where a rebel baron was killed on the toilet during a year-long siege. Prajama Castle's hidden supply room. Rising further is the room where 15th century ruler Erasmus of Prajama met his inglorious end at Slovenia's dramatic cave castle. Carved directly into a 400-foot cliff face, Prajama Castle sits above the town in south-central Slovenia, with secret passages through natural cave systems allowing supplies during sieges. One of the most dramatically situated fortresses in all of Europe, Erasmus came into conflict with the powerful Habsburgs after killing an imperial army commander in Vienna to avenge his deceased deceased friend André Baumkircher, whose honor had been offended. When Erasmus discovered the commander was related to Holy Roman Emperor Frederick III, one of Europe's most powerful rulers, he fled to Prejama Castle to escape execution. The Habsburgs laid siege to the castle, surrounding it with soldiers attempting to starve Erasmus into surrender. But Erasmus used hidden passages through the cave system behind the castle to continue raiding the countryside and resupplying his fortress with food and weapons. For over a year, Erasmus defied the Habsburgs' siege, becoming a folk hero to local Slovenians who saw him as a rebellion against Austrian imperial power. He allegedly taunted besiegers by throwing fresh cherries over the walls during fruit season, demonstrating he could access fresh supplies despite their blockade. The small hidden room in the rock at the castle's entrance became Erasmus's death site through betrayal rather than military defeat. A servant revealed Erasmus's routine to the besieging forces, informing them when he would be most vulnerable. Erasmus was hit by a cannonball while sitting on the toilet in that little room, an unheroic end that transformed a defiant rebel into a humorous historical footnote. His ghost allegedly still haunts the castle, perhaps embarrassed by his undignified death. Reddit discussions emphasize the castle's status as the world's largest cave castle, with secret tunnels enabling year-long resistance against superior forces. TripAdvisor reviews praise visiting the Knight's Hall, dining room, medieval kitchen, and armory, all carved into the cliff. The positive elements include genuinely functional secret passages that served crucial military purposes during a documented siege. The toilet death adds dark humor to genuine historical tragedy. However, this ranks here because, while the hidden passages served crucial survival functions, the room where Erasmus died was simply a bathroom, an unfortunate location rather than deliberate secrecy. If you think dying on the toilet during a siege is embarrassing, then you haven't heard about Queen Marie Antoinette's secret passages that couldn't ultimately save her from the guillotine. Versailles' hidden escape routes. Advancing higher belongs to Marie Antoinette's secret corridors at the Palace of Versailles, one of the world's most opulent royal residences. Behind a door, concealed in the tapestry of the Queen's bedroom wall, lay a network of private passages separate from those used by King Louis XVI, allowing the royal couple to move through the palace without encountering each other or being observed by thousands of courtiers. Architects built these separate corridors, thinking it better to prevent the Queen from accessing her husband's mistress's rooms, a practical consideration given that French kings traditionally maintained official mistresses with apartments in the palace as displays of virility. The irony proved extraordinarily thick. Louis XVI never had an affair during his marriage, remaining faithful to Marie Antoinette despite centuries of French royal tradition encouraging extramarital relationships. The king not only never took mistresses, but took 7 years to consummate his marriage with Marie Antoinette, possibly due to medical issues requiring minor surgery, creating a sexless marriage that became gossip fodder throughout European court. The secret passages designed to preserve royal marital boundaries by preventing the Queen from encountering mistresses that never existed served no such purpose. Instead, during the French Revolution riots, when angry mobs stormed Versailles on October 6, 1789, seeking to kill the royal family, these hidden corridors became Marie Antoinette's escape route from murderous crowds demanding aristocratic blood. The Palace of Versailles houses over 6,000 paintings and 3,000 sculptures, making it one of the world's most famous monuments to royal excess. The secret passages add intimate human drama to overwhelming opulence. Reddit posts show the hidden door visible in the Queen's bedroom, a physical remnant of royal privacy and revolutionary terror. The positive aspect is historical poignancy. These passages literally saved the Queen's life during the October 1789 attack, though only temporarily before her eventual execution by guillotine in 1793, after years of imprisonment. They represent both royal privilege, requiring secret corridors for privacy within a palace, where even bedroom activities were semi-public events, and desperate flight from revolutionary violence. If you think escape passages that failed to save a queen are tragic, then you haven't heard about the Scottish castle that allegedly imprisoned a deformed heir too hideous for society. Glamis Castle's secret chamber. Approaching the top is Glamis Castle's legendary secret chamber, home to Scotland's most persistent and disturbing aristocratic horror story. This 14th century castle near the village of Glamis in Angus, Scotland, served as home to the Earl and Countess of Strathmore and Kinghorn for generations. Despite being called Scotland's most beautiful castle with stunning architecture and picturesque grounds, Glamis allegedly imprisoned a secret too horrible for public knowledge, a family member too monstrous to acknowledge. According to legends spanning from the 1840s until 1905, when the monster allegedly died, the castle concealed a man too hideous and violent for society, locked away in a hidden chamber where he lived out his entire life without seeing daylight or interacting with anyone beyond the minimal servants required to keep him alive with food and basic care. An 1808 article in the journal Notes and Queries described him as a monster who is the rightful heir to the title and property, but who is so unpresentable that it is necessary to keep him out of sight and out of possession, a chilling description suggesting the family valued social standing over the welfare of their own blood. Victorian-era guests who stayed at Glamis Castle reported whispered stories among servants about a child born to the Bowes-Lyon family, so horribly deformed that he could never inherit the title or be seen in public without causing scandal. His family, rather than institutionalizing him or finding medical care, decided imprisonment in a secret chamber within the castle was preferable to the social scandal his existence would cause among aristocratic circles where physical perfection indicated divine favor. According to these accounts, the deformed heir lived for decades in this hidden room, aging from infant to old man without ever leaving his prison. The legend became so widespread that successive earls of Strathmore reportedly told each heir about the family secret on their 21st birthday, passing down knowledge of the monster's existence and location from generation to generation as a heavy burden. Those who learned the truth allegedly became deeply disturbed by the knowledge, with some accounts claiming the revelation changed their personalities permanently. The ghost of this imprisoned heir is said to still reside in the hidden chamber, though the exact location remains disputed. The castle has attracted supernatural rumors for centuries beyond just the monster. Stories include clans being walled up alive during medieval conflicts and vampires lurking in the towers. The positive aspect, if any exists in such a grim story, is pure Gothic horror potentially translated into real family tragedy that exposes the cruelty aristocratic families inflicted to preserve appearances. If true, this represents the dark lengths aristocracy would go to preserve bloodline purity and social standing. The negative is, we may never know the truth. The story could be entirely fabricated, drastically exaggerated, or based on a real person whose disabilities were nowhere near as severe as legend claims. If you think imprisoning a deformed heir is horrifying, then you haven't seen The Secret. Passage in Dracula's castle that was lost for centuries until 1918. Bran Castle's Lost Passage. Nearing the top is the steep, narrow secret passage at Bran Castle in Romania's Transylvanian mountains, known worldwide as Dracula's Castle, despite historical Vlad the Impaler having only tenuous connections to the structure. Built directly into the castle walls, this passage connects the first and third floors through a claustrophobic vertical route and remained lost for hundreds of years until workers discovered it in 1918 after the castle was given to Queen Marie by the Romanian people following World War I. Bran Castle served originally as a stronghold for the Knights of the Teutonic Order, a Catholic military order that built fortifications throughout Eastern Europe. The castle's strategic location in the Carpathian Mountains made it a crucial defensive position, controlling trade routes and mountain passes. Its most famous association comes from Vlad III, known as Vlad the Impaler, who ruled Wallachia in the late 1400s and became the historical inspiration for Bram Stoker's Count Dracula character. Vlad earned his infamous nickname for brutal warfare tactics, including impaling enemies on large wooden spikes. The impaled bodies displayed as psychological warfare to terrify opponents. Estimates suggest Vlad killed tens of thousands through impalement and other methods during his reign. The secret passage appears carved directly from stone, with irregular steep steps barely wider than adult shoulders. Each step varies in height and depth, making climbing difficult and dangerous. The passage's entrance was hidden behind an old fireplace on the first floor, camouflaged camouflaged so effectively, it went unnoticed for centuries as the castle changed hands between Romanian and Hungarian nobles. Historians believe officers used it as an emergency escape route during attack, allowing castle defenders to move between floors when main staircases were blocked. The steep, narrow design that makes modern tourists uncomfortable would have been a desperate lifeline during medieval warfare when capture meant execution. Reddit posts clarify it wasn't Dracula's secret passage for sneaking into guest rooms, that's romantic fiction, but rather a practical escape route with documented military purposes. However, the discovery during restoration work adds archaeological legitimacy to a castle already steeped in dark legends and vampire mythology. The positive elements include genuine historical purpose combined with pop culture significance that transformed a regional Romanian castle into an international destination. The passage served real military functions while existing in a castle famous for vampire associations. Its physical characteristics, steep inclines, narrow width, hidden behind fireplaces, match exactly what visitors imagine secret castle passages should be. Bran Castle's Lost Passage ranks here because it perfectly marries practical medieval architecture with legendary horror in a package that satisfies both historians and Gothic fiction enthusiasts. Hundreds of thousands of tourists visit annually specifically for Dracula connections, and this genuine secret passage delivers an authentic medieval atmosphere while supporting vampire mythology. If you think a hidden passage in Dracula's castle is terrifying, then you haven't heard about America's first serial killer who built an entire hotel full of secret murder rooms. The Murder Castle's Labyrinth of Death. Topping our list, undeniably the most horrifying secret rooms. H.H. Holmes's Murder Castle, the World's Fair Hotel, built 3 miles west of the 1893 Chicago World Fair. Holmes, whose real name was Herman Webster Mudgett, confessed to murdering 27 people in secret rooms and torture chambers he specifically designed and built for the purpose of killing, making him America's first documented serial killer who used architecture itself as a murder weapon. The hotel was nightmare-made architecture, a 3-story building designed from foundation to roof for systematic murder. Soundproof rooms ensured victims' screams went unheard by neighboring guests or passing pedestrians on busy Chicago street. Disorienting mazes of hallways seemed to lead nowhere, confusing guests and preventing escape attempts when they realized the danger they faced. Some corridors ended in blank walls, while others doubled back on themselves, creating spatial confusion that made finding exits nearly impossible for panicked victims desperately trying to flee. Rooms contained trapdoors with slides dropping directly to the basement, where Holmes disposed of bodies through various horrific methods. The basement allegedly contained acid vats for dissolving flesh and destroying identifying features, quicklime pits that accelerated decomposition of organic matter, and a crematorium for final disposal that reduced bodies to ash that could be scattered without leaving evidence. This systematic approach to murder and body disposal demonstrates planning and architectural forethought that goes beyond opportunistic killing into premeditated industrial-scale murder planned before construction even began. Holmes constructed his murder hotel during the lead-up to the 1893 World's Fair, anticipating that thousands of visitors would flood Chicago needing lodging and that many would be traveling alone without family to notice their disappearance. He positioned himself to profit from World's Fair tourism while using the influx of temporary residents, people whose disappearances might not be immediately noticed since they came from distant cities and states, as a hunting ground for victims. The World's Fair provided perfect cover for serial murder on an unprecedented scale. Holmes was arrested in 1894 after insurance fraud investigations uncovered evidence connecting him to multiple disappearances and suspicious deaths. He confessed to 27 murders during interrogation and trial, though some estimates place the actual number far higher based on missing persons reports and human remains found in the building. He was sentenced to death by hanging and executed in 1896. Shortly after his execution, an unknown arsonist destroyed his hotel in a fire that consumed the building, erasing the physical evidence of his crimes and preventing the murder site from becoming a macabre tourist attraction. The Murder Castle was later rebuilt on the same plot and used as a post office, transforming a site of systematic murder into a symbol of civic function and federal authority. The Inglewood branch of the U.S. Post Office now occupies the site, and the location location is often cited as one of Chicago's most haunted places, with reports of supernatural activity from postal workers and visitors who claim to sense residual evil from the murders committed there. Online discussion reveals fascinating historical debates about the extent of Holmes's crimes and the accuracy of newspaper accounts from the 1890s, when sensational journalism was common and verification standards were minimal. Reddit's Ask Historians argues that torture chambers, soundproof rooms, and gas chambers were all newspaper inventions, sensationalized stories created by journalists seeking dramatic copy rather than verified facts based on police investigations. Another post states sensationalized claims about secret torture chambers, trapdoors, gas chambers, and basement crematorium were untrue, based on modern historical analysis. However, other Reddit posts and X discussions describe the building as featuring gas chambers, torture rooms, secret passages, trapdoors, and industrial ovens based on contemporary accounts and trial testimony. Some accounts estimate Holmes killed 200 people in the building, far exceeding his 27-victim confession, a number that might represent only those murders he was willing to admit rather than his actual total. These conflicting accounts create a historical puzzle where separating documented facts from newspaper sensationalism becomes nearly impossible over a century later, with limited physical evidence after the fire. This historical debate about specific details doesn't diminish the ranking. Holmes confessed to 27 murders, was convicted in court with overwhelming evidence, and executed by the state after exhausting appeals. The hotel was real and documented in photographs and building records. Secret rooms were verified by police investigations. Whether every sensational newspaper detail was accurate or embellished for sales, the core horror remains verified by legal proceedings, Holmes's own confession, and victims' families who testified at trial. If you enjoyed this video, please click on any of the cards on your screen.